We bring in now Alex Berenson. Alex, you're a media guy. You've been in media for a long time. You used to be at the New York Times. Now you have a Substack. You've been on with us now for years, been doing a great job. You, like me, have kind of traversed a unique path. You voted for Trump. We'll get to that in a moment. But what lesson do you think on a larger scale is out there for media in the wake of Trump's triumph, his popular vote win, even despite CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, Washington Post, Fox, the New York Times, largely being propaganda for the Kamala campaign? Where do we go from here? Again, that CNN story, hundreds of layoffs coming as their audience is tanking.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw that, and as you were reading the intro, and I have to admit, I'm smiling. You know, Brian Stelter and Oliver Darcy, who are, Oliver left CNN, Brian got fired from CNN and then rehired. They both tried to have me censored 3 years ago, because that's what legacy media does to reporters it doesn't like. It just tosses out, any effort.
Can I just tell you, Alex, he started his career with me at The Blaze.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, maybe CNN, maybe he'll wind up back there after CNN.
Maybe.
But they can't compete. And there was a story actually just before the election where somebody said, well, just the fact that 50% of the country at a minimum have absolutely tuned out the mainstream media, and that Joe Rogan by himself is probably more powerful than the entire mainstream media, that you guys are probably more powerful than the Washington Post, right? That just tells you how much trust these people have burned in the last, 10 years. And honestly, this year's been the worst year yet, right? Because look what happened with Joe Biden, okay? Look what happened in the spring with Joe Biden. It was entirely clear he couldn't function. And there was a U.S. attorney, one of the few people outside, sort of the Biden administration, outside the cloister, who got inside just to talk to him for a couple hours, right, to interview him, in the documents case. And that U.S. attorney in February put out a report saying this guy can't really function, right? I mean, that wasn't the point of the report, but there was a line in it: a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. And the media went crazy trying to discredit Robert Hur, that U.S. attorney, and arguing at anybody who pointed out the videos showing just how clearly senile and addled Joe Biden was, and saying they were cheap. So they made up this word, cheap fake. And people saw, for once, they got to see Joe Biden on June 27th on his own, not having a teleprompter to help him. And they saw how messed up he really was. And I think that was the end. Okay, it started years and years ago. It got worse with COVID. It got worse with the failure of the mRNA vaccines, which they still haven't admitted. But in June, it was over. And listen, obviously, I have self-interest here, but if I ran the New York Times, I'd be calling me, okay, or Matt Taibbi or Barry Weiss and saying, I'm not asking you to run my newspaper. I'm not asking you necessarily for story ideas, but you got to tell me, how did we get so messed up that we can't even tell the truth about something as basic as the senility of the president?
Speaking of telling the truth, Alex, I saw your tweet, and I'm sure or I guess we call them posts now, but I still like tweet. I saw your post on X where you said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, you also included some information from the autopsy report. Now that we're allowed to tell the truth again in the media, when do we get to talk about the fact that George Floyd died of an overdose? How did that go for you? I'm just wondering, go ahead.
So 4 years ago, I would have been, my head would have been put on a stick, maybe quite literally, okay? Now, that got 60,000 likes. It got 3.6 million views. It's sort of back to the COVID days for me, where I could, where I really could feel like, wow, a lot of people are seeing this. And if there are a few people who disagreed, and you're entitled to disagree, but the fact that I was able to sort of put that out and get it seen, and all it frankly is the autopsy report itself, it was striking to me. And the other thing that was striking to me about putting that out is you guys probably had seen that and knew that he had such toxic levels of fentanyl and methamphetamine in his blood.
We talked about it on the show quite a lot.
Yeah.
But so the mainstream media and the elite media did such a good job hiding this fact that people I know who are on the right, smart conservatives, said to me, "Are you sure this is real? Are you sure you didn't get, faked out into putting up something that's not true?" And I said, "Here's the link to the medical examiner's office. Here's the link that will show you that this is real." But people, that's the one thing the media has left. They can't really drive news, but they can hide news. So they've refused to report on my lawsuit against the Biden administration, and people don't know about that.
Well, if you remember, there was also in the Trayvon Martin case, the photo that everybody thought of when they thought of Trayvon Martin tended to be him, I believe, where he was 12 years old. And to this day, I still have people that say, "Oh, well, George Zimmerman, that guy was just a kid." I mean, Trayvon I think he was 18, and he was 6 feet tall and 185 pounds. I mean, he was a full-grown man bashing this guy in the face. Now, I'm not, some big fan of George Zimmerman or anything. I mean, he's had bad stuff has happened with that guy. But they also changed the audio, you remember, of Zimmerman calling into the police. Someone actually got fired for that. But the media constructed this entire narrative around Trayvon Martin that was able to endure, despite the fact that, no, he was not 12 when he jumped on George Zimmerman. The other one is the photo that most people think of with Mike Brown is his graduation photo, right? And this is another thing where you say, okay, well,
300 pounds, right? Mike Brown was 300 pounds.
Yes, he was a 300-pound man when he was charging the police officer. But I'm just bringing up incidents where the media has effectively rewritten the history. And it's a lot of the time it's on these issues of BLM or police violence. And your willingness to talk about this issue again. When do we get to discuss, did Derek Chauvin get a fair trial?
That's right.
Yeah,
by the way, you can make a case that maybe he's guilty of manslaughter, maybe he committed assault, right? But that man's in jail essentially for the rest of his life, 22 and a half to life, and he's already faced one assault in prison. I mean, I did the second post that I put up after the first one was I thought we outlawed human sacrifice, right? Like Derek Chauvin definitely didn't get what the trial we would all hope to get. And that was in large part because people, I think, pretty much knew that if he were acquitted, there were going to be more riots. And that's not okay.
He was effectively handed over to the mob. It was mob justice, even though the state did it. And this is why I want to ask you about Daniel Penny. I can tell you, there's been some New York Post reporters who have been in that courtroom, sharing what they're seeing and observing. There are, activists in that courtroom shouting and screaming and they've made this a cause for the anti-police sort of NGO apparatus. And I'm sitting here, I'm going, and there's a lot of references in the transcript to Daniel Penny that seem to me to be intentionally inflammatory. Is he getting a fair trial? Is anyone going to talk about this?
I mean, I've only seen what you've seen. It's funny. You're making me wish that I'd gone down there and sat in myself. I mean, I've seen the references to the white guy, the white man, without actually reading the transcript. I will withhold judgment, but I think you're raising a good question.
Alex, you voted for Trump. I don't think you voted for Trump in 20, or at least publicly didn't say it.
I did not. I did not vote for him in 20 or 16. I did not.
20 or 16. What has the reaction been for you for voting for Trump for the first time in 24? First part. Second part, I've met a lot of people who have come up to me and said what you have, your political path, didn't vote Trump 16, didn't vote 20. The math seems to suggest that there are millions of those people nationwide based on the popular vote. What has the reaction been to you since you announced you were voting Trump in 24, and what finally put you over to make that choice different than you did in 16 and 20?
So my mother, who is a big MSNBC viewer, is very mad at me. Aside from that, I mean, and I've gotten, a few attaboys from people who are readers of my Substack. Obviously, my Substack runs conservative. And some of those people said, well, why didn't you do it in 2020 or 2016? you're too late. Well, I made my own decision and I got there my own way. I would say what got me over the edge, believe it or not, and I've been very close. But I did have concerns especially about his sort of unwillingness to say, look, if I lose, I'm going to acknowledge that I lost. I didn't like that. Okay. But I'd say two things. When I actually thought about the Biden administration and what they did to me, right? They censored me. How could I not, vote for the other side under those circumstances? And people on the left have been hysterical about Donald Trump now for almost 10 years. And saying he's going to be a fascist. He's going to be a fascist. And in his first term, he was not a fascist. Okay, you can say a lot of things about him, but he wasn't an authoritarian and he wasn't a fascist. So I finally just sort of got tired of being lectured to by all those folks. And I'll say one more thing. I was in Iraq in 2003 and 2004 for the New York Times. I saw us prosecute that war. I saw it go badly. Okay, I don't like Dick Cheney. I don't like the Cheneys. The idea that Kamala Harris thought it was a good idea, thought that people like me in the middle, really in the middle, were going to be convinced by Liz Cheney is insane. It's such bad judgment that it almost sort of is disqualifying.
Yeah, the fact that they wrapped their arms in a big hug around Liz Cheney at the very end was pretty amazing. I think a defining moment for the campaign. One thing I want to ask you, Alex, we only got about a minute and a half left, but just want to put this out there. Trump, new administration, big win, mandate perhaps, all these things going on. I'm not done with the COVID maniacs. I mean, we're going to have somebody here in charge of, NIH. We're going to have somebody new in charge of CDC. How could we... I'm not saying like publicly tar and feather, like that's a medieval thing. We don't do that anymore. But how could we get some accountability for this?
Well, great question. So, and I know we don't have much time. I'll say two things. Hopefully they open the books and sort of reveal, partly, I'd like that for myself and my lawsuit, right? But I think it'd be really good to open the books and see what CDC knew, what they were, and the FDA, what they were talking to the companies about in 2021 in the summer as the vaccines were really failing for the first time. Because there's information that hasn't come out. The second thing, and this is sort of both about the COVID vaccines, but all vaccines. I'm a very big fan of this. I'm going to keep writing about it. So there are two products you can't sue over in the United States. One is social media. You basically can't sue them for any reason. And the other are vaccines, not other drugs. If something goes wrong and you take a drug, you can sue the company. But if it's a vaccine, if it's called a vaccine, if it's an mRNA vaccine, you basically can't sue. And, it's funny, I'm such a Republican. I'm joking. I really believe, in our tort system, right? It's really important. And the fact that the Democrats want and have given vaccine companies immunity is crazy. And that needs to go away.
I agree.
Totally agree
on that.
All right. Well, Alex, you keep coming on here. We're going to keep banging this drum on all these issues and just drop massive truth bombs from 30,000 feet. Because as you see, the people respond. People like the truth. And now because of Elon, at least on X and on your Substack, which people should go subscribe to, Unreported Truths, you can get it out there. So, Alex, it's been quite a journey.
As long
Thanks
as
for being with us.
Me, I will come on. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. You know what I'm doing this weekend? Once again, Clay, going back out to the gun range. True story. Going out to the gun range once again. Going to be there. And, I did pretty well this past weekend. I'm not going to lie. I was putting some steel down range. I was making it happen. You know what I mean? I was sending it, as they say. But I want to be a little bit better. I want to be getting better all the time. It's just part of the hobby of being of shooting sports, but also of being efficient and appreciating and understanding and fully having your Second Amendment rights. And that's why the Mantis X is so helpful, because I can't get to the range again until Saturday. What am I doing this week? I'm at home. I'm cleaning my pistols. I'm cleaning my rifle. The rifle takes forever. And I'm training with my Mantis X system. Mantis X is dry fire practice, all electric. You attach it to your gun just like you would a weapon light. You download the easy-to-use app on your phone, follow instructions, and you are improving your shooting skills. Those fundamental things like trigger pull, sight alignment, all going to be better with Mantis X. Mantis X gives you instant feedback on your shot and aim, provides helpful tips as well. 94% of Mantis X users see improvement within the first half hour of use. Get better at your shooting and have fun while you're doing it. Get your Mantis X today, mantisx.com. That's mantisx.com.